In a quiet countryside town, surrounded by rolling green fields and the soft hum of evening crickets, lived a girl named Lena. She wasn't anyone special in the eyes of the world, just a simple girl with messy hair, old sneakers, and a heart that carried more dreams than she could ever tell. Her family didn't have much, but they had love, laughter, and music. And for Lena, that was enough. Every evening when the sun dipped low and painted the sky with golden light, Lena would sit on the old wooden porch with a trumpet in her hands. It wasn't shiny or new. In fact, it was full of tiny scratches and dents. It had once belonged to her father, who had played it during his younger years in the local town band. When he passed away a few years ago, he left it to her, the one thing he loved most. To everyone else, it was just an old instrument. But to Lena, it was a piece of him that still sang. The first time she tried to play, the sound that came out was terrible. Her fingers trembled, and her lips ached from trying to hold the right note. But she didn't give up. Day after day, she practiced under the open sky. Sometimes the neighbors laughed when they heard her missed notes floating across the fields, but she smiled through it. "Someday," she whispered to herself, "I'll make it sing again." Lena didn't have a music teacher or fancy lessons. She learned from listening, old recordings of jazz, street performances on the internet, and the faint memories of her father humming tunes in the kitchen. She had a gift, though she didn't realize it yet. When she played, even with all her flaws, her music had something different. It wasn't polished, but it was alive. Every note told a story. Every pause carried emotion. At school, most of her classmates didn't know much about her. She wasn't the type to draw attention. She wore secondhand clothes and kept to herself. But the music teacher, an older man who once played in a local orchestra, noticed her one day during an open music session. Lena had borrowed a trumpet from the school band room and was playing quietly in the corner. The teacher stopped listening. There was something raw, something honest in the way she played. It was as if her heart spoke through every sound. After the session, he approached her. "You play from the soul," he said. "Don't ever lose that," Lena smiled shyly. "I don't really know what I'm doing," she admitted. "Good," he replied. "That means you're still listening. To the music, not the rules." From that day, he often let her stay after school to practice. He didn't correct her much. Instead, he let her explore, experiment, and learn through feeling. When the school year ended, he gave her a small sheet of paper with handwritten notes of famous trumpet solos to study. "You've got something special," he told her. "Keep going." And she did. Summer came, and with it long days filled with sunlight and the smell of blooming flowers. Lena spent most of her time outside, practicing under a big oak tree near the edge of town. Birds would often stop to listen. Sometimes even the cows from nearby farms wandered close, curious about the strange sounds. Her best friend, a girl named Mira, would sit beside her, recording short clips on her phone. They laughed, talked about dreams, and shared stories of what they would do when they grew up. "You're really good," Mira said one day. "You should post your videos online." Lena frowned. "Who would watch me? I'm just a girl from nowhere." "That's exactly why they'd watch you," Mira replied. "People love real things." After weeks of convincing, Lena finally agreed. Mira uploaded one of her videos, a clip of Lena playing a soft jazz piece her father used to love. They didn't expect much. But a few days later, the video started getting views. Dozens turned into hundreds, then thousands. Comments poured in from people all over saying her playing made them feel something they couldn't explain. "She plays like she's talking to your heart," one comment said. "This is what real music sounds like," another wrote. Lena couldn't believe it. For the first time, people outside her little town were hearing her music. It filled her with a strange mix of joy and fear. She didn't want fame. She just wanted her father's music to live on. But somehow it seemed the world was listening now. As her video continued to spread, news outlets began sharing the story of the simple girl with the golden trumpet. Reporters came to the small town to film her playing under the oak tree. They asked her about her life, her dreams, her music. She didn't have fancy answers. "I just play what I feel," she told them softly. "My father used to say music is the voice of the heart. I think he was right." Her story became a small sensation online. People loved her honesty and her humble nature. But while most admired her, not everyone was kind. Some said she didn't deserve the attention. Others mocked her technique, saying she lacked real training. Lena tried not to let it bother her, but sometimes, late at night, The words echoed in her mind. Was she really good enough? Still, she played. Every morning before school, she practiced. Every evening before bed, she played one last tune for her father. Her calluses grew thicker, her tone smoother. The trumpet began to sound clearer, richer. It was as if the instrument itself was waking up again, responding to her devotion. One weekend, a local community fair invited her to perform. It would be her first time playing in front of a real crowd. Lena almost said no, her nerves were too much. But Mira insisted. You've already touched hearts online. Now it's time to do it in person. When the day came, the fairgrounds buzzed with music, laughter, and the smell of popcorn. A small stage had been set up near the main field, decorated with colorful banners. Lena stood backstage, clutching her trumpet, her hands trembling. She took a deep breath and stepped out when they called her name. At first, she couldn't look at the audience. She stared at the ground, feeling her heart pound. Then she remembered her father's words. Music isn't about who's watching. It's about what you give. She lifted the trumpet to her lips and began to play. The first note was soft and shaky, but as she continued, something inside her shifted. The world around her disappeared. The noise faded. All that remained was the sound of her trumpet, and the feeling that she was speaking directly to every soul listening. Her melody told a story of loss, hope, love, and quiet strength. By the time she finished, the crowd was silent for a moment, then burst into applause. Tears filled her eyes as she bowed. She had done it. She had played for her father, for herself, for everyone who ever felt small but dared to dream. Someone in the crowd had recorded her performance. The video went online that night, and within days it spread like wildfire. Musicians, teachers, and even well-known performers shared it, praising her sincerity. She became a symbol of passion over perfection, a reminder that true art comes from the heart, not from fame or money. But among those who saw the video was someone unexpected, a world-famous trumpet performer known for his bold style and unshakable confidence. He had played on grand stages around the world, always surrounded by lights and applause. When he saw the video of the simple girl from the countryside, he watched it twice, then 3 times. There was something about her music that unsettled him. It wasn't about skill, it was about soul. A few days later, he posted a message online that caught everyone's attention. It was short but powerful. He wrote, "If this girl's music is as good live as it is on video, I challenge her to a trumpet duel on my next tour." The internet exploded. People couldn't believe it. A world-famous performer challenging a small-town girl? It sounded unreal. Some called it a publicity stunt. Others said it was unfair. But Lena, when she heard the news, didn't know what to feel. Her hands went cold. Her heart raced. A challenge from someone she had admired since she first picked up her father's trumpet? It felt like a dream and a nightmare at once. Her town buzzed with excitement. Reporters returned. Everyone wanted to know, would she accept the challenge? For days, Lena avoided the cameras and questions. She practiced quietly in her backyard, thinking of her father. What would he say? Would he tell her to be brave or to stay humble? One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned orange, she held the trumpet close and whispered, "You believed in me, Papa, so I'll believe too." That night, she posted her reply online, "I accept." The message was simple, but it shook the internet again. The girl from nowhere had said yes. The stage was set for something no one expected, a rivalry that would not just test music, but hearts. What began as a challenge would soon become a story the world would never forget. After Lena accepted the challenge, her small town felt different. The quiet streets suddenly buzzed with excitement and curiosity. People who had never talked about music before now spoke of nothing else. At the grocery store, in the school hallways, at the coffee shop, everyone asked the same question: can she really do it? Lena didn't know either. She had no idea what awaited her. But once she made the decision, there was no turning back. The famous performer had set the date for his concert in the nearby city. In just a few weeks, she would stand before a crowd unlike anything she had ever imagined. It wasn't just her town anymore, it was the world watching. At first, the attention felt unreal. Journalists began calling, asking for interviews. Music magazines wrote about her story, the small-town girl who dared to accept a challenge from one of the greatest trumpet players alive. Some praised her courage. Others mocked her for being naive. "She'll get crushed on stage," one critic wrote online. Talent is one thing, but experience is another. Lena tried not to read those comments, but sometimes they slipped through. They hurt, but she refused to let them break her spirit. Her best friend Mira stood by her side through it all. "Don't listen to them," she said firmly. "They don't know your heart. You didn't accept the challenge to win. You did it to play." Lena smiled weakly. "But what if I embarrass myself in front of everyone?" "Then you'll still be the bravest girl I know," Mira replied. The town decided to help her in any way they could. The old community hall became her practice space. People brought snacks, coffee, and sometimes just sat to listen. A retired musician offered to help her rehearse and give her tips on breathing and timing. Even the mayor stopped by one day and said, "You're representing all of us out there. We believe in you." For the first time, Lena felt what it meant to carry a dream that wasn't just her own. She practiced every single day. Morning to night, her trumpet echoed through the small hall. At first, her notes wavered with nerves, but slowly her sound grew stronger. She studied recordings of great players, learned techniques, and pushed herself past exhaustion. Her lips would ache and her fingers would stiffen, but she kept going. Every time she wanted to stop, she remembered her father and how he had once told her, "Music comes from patience as much as passion." One afternoon, while she was practicing, Mira walked in with her phone in hand. "You have to see this," she said. She showed Lena a video clip of the famous performer rehearsing for his tour. The man was surrounded by a full orchestra, lights, and cheering fans. His playing was flawless, fast, bright, and filled with confidence. "He's amazing," Mira whispered. Lena watched silently. There was no denying it, the man was on another level. "Maybe this was a mistake," Lena said softly. "Stop," Mira replied. "You don't need to be better. You just need to be you." But as the concert date drew closer, the pressure became heavier. Reporters came again asking her about her strategy, as if she were preparing for a sports match. "Will you go for a classical piece or a modern one? Do you think you have a chance to win?" She didn't know what to say. To her, it wasn't about winning or losing. It was about sharing her heart through music. But that answer didn't make for exciting headlines. When the day of travel came, the entire town gathered at the bus station. Some waved flags with her name on them. Others carried signs that said, "We're proud of you, Lena." Even her school band showed up to play a short tune as she left. The bus ride to the city felt long and quiet. She watched the fields roll by and tried to calm her racing thoughts. Mira sat beside her, holding her hand. "You're ready," she whispered. "You've always been ready." The city was everything Lena wasn't used to. Bright lights, tall buildings, and endless noise. When she arrived at the concert venue, she felt small. The place was massive, with red velvet seats stretching as far as the eye could see. Technicians moved around, testing lights and microphones. On stage stood the famous performer himself, surrounded by his crew. He looked exactly as she had seen him in videos, confident, polished, and calm. When he noticed her walking in, he gave a polite smile. "So you're the small-town prodigy," he said, his tone not unkind but slightly amused. Lena nodded nervously. "I guess that's what they call me." "I hope you're ready," he said, lifting his trumpet slightly. "Let's make this something people will remember." She smiled weakly. "That's all I want." The sound check began. Lena was given a few minutes to test the microphone and lighting. Standing on that stage, she felt her knees shake. The seats were empty for now, but she could imagine them filled with thousands of eyes. She closed her eyes and played a few soft notes, letting the sound fill the room. It echoed beautifully, like a whisper traveling through the air. For a moment, she forgot her fear. She remembered her father's face, her town, her tree, the sound of birds while she practiced. The world grew quiet. That night, she barely slept. She kept replaying every note in her mind, imagining the performance over and over. Mira stayed up with her, trying to distract her with jokes and stories. But Lena's mind was fixed on one thing. She had to play from the heart no matter what happened. The next day arrived too soon. The concert hall was packed. People from all over had come to witness the event that had captured everyone's attention. Television crews were there too. It wasn't just a concert anymore, it was a worldwide moment. The famous performer opened the night with a dazzling display of skill. His trumpet sang with perfect clarity and control. The crowd roared after every piece. He smiled, bowing gracefully, clearly in his element. Then came Lena's turn. The announcer called her name and she stepped onto the stage. The bright lights blinded her for a moment. She could feel the heat of the spotlight and the weight of thousands of eyes. Her hands trembled as she raised her trumpet. She could hear whispers in the crowd, some cheering her on, others doubting her. Her heart pounded so loud she thought everyone could hear it. Then she remembered something her father once said. Don't play the notes. Tell the story. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and began to play. The first few notes were soft, almost fragile, but slowly the sound grew warmer, deeper. The melody she chose wasn't a famous piece. It was a song her father had written for her when she was little. A song about home, love, and the strength to keep going. As she played, her fear melted away. Each note carried emotion, honesty, and the memory of every moment that brought her there. The crowd grew silent. Even the cameras seemed to fade into the background. Halfway through the piece, a tear rolled down her cheek, but she kept playing. Her music wasn't perfect. It cracked once, wavered another time, but no one cared. What she gave them wasn't perfection. It was truth. When she finished, the last note lingered in the air, soft as a sigh. The hall was silent for a moment, as if everyone was afraid to break the spell. Then came the applause. Loud, long, and filled with emotion. People stood up cheering, clapping, some even crying. Mira jumped from her seat, clapping with all her heart. Lena lowered her trumpet and bowed, her chest rising with heavy breaths. She looked across the stage at the performer. He wasn't smiling this time. He was staring at her, eyes full of something unexpected. Respect. He stepped forward, raised his trumpet, and played a few simple notes. It wasn't part of the plan, but it was his way of answering her. Together, without words, they began to play a short duet. He followed her melody, letting her lead. The crowd went wild. Two musicians, one famous, one unknown, now played as equals. It wasn't a battle anymore. It was a conversation, a moment of pure connection. When the music finally stopped, the audience roared louder than ever. Cameras flashed, people cheered, and the two stood side by side, smiling. The performer took the microphone and said, "Tonight wasn't about rivalry. It was about music, and she reminded me what it truly means." Lena felt her throat tighten as the crowd chanted her name. She couldn't believe what had just happened. The fear, the doubt, the long nights of practice, it had all led to this moment. She didn't win or lose. She simply played from her heart, and that was enough. After the concert, reporters surrounded her, asking how she felt. "I'm just thankful," she said softly. "Music brought us together. That's what matters most." When she finally stepped outside, the night air felt cool and peaceful. Mira hugged her tightly. "You did it," she whispered. Lena smiled through her tears. "We did it." Somewhere inside that grand concert hall, the famous performer sat quietly in his dressing room, thinking. He had played on the biggest stages, but never had he felt something like that before. The girl from the countryside had reminded him that music wasn't about perfection or fame. It was about heart. And though the concert was over, something inside both of them had just begun to change. The night after the concert felt like a dream that Lena couldn't quite believe had happened. When she woke up the next morning in her small hotel room, the world outside was already buzzing. Her phone was overflowing with messages, notifications, and calls. People from around the world were talking about her performance, the simple girl who had faced one of the greatest trumpet players alive and moved an entire audience to tears. She sat on the edge of her bed, still in disbelief. The previous night replayed in her mind like a slow movie. The lights, the cheers, the music that had poured straight from her soul. She didn't win or lose, and somehow that made it all the more beautiful. Mira was already awake, sitting by the window with her phone in hand. "You're everywhere," she said with a grin. "Look," she handed the phone to Lena, who scrolled through pages of headlines. "The girl who taught the world to feel music again. When heart outshined fame. Small-town trumpet player leaves world speechless." Lena's hands trembled slightly. "I didn't expect this," she whispered. Mira smiled. "You didn't play for them. You played for yourself. That's why they listened." But while most people were celebrating her courage, others were busy debating. Some said she had been brave and talented. Others claimed it was all luck, a publicity stunt that the famous performer had staged to boost his own reputation. The internet, as always, had its mix of admiration and cruelty. Lena tried not to let the negative comments bother her, but sometimes, late at night, she couldn't help but read them. "She's good for a beginner, but she'll never last in the professional world." one comment said. Another read, "She only got attention because she's a novelty." Those words stung more than she wanted to admit. A few days later, she was invited to a press conference arranged by the performers team. He had insisted that she be included. When she walked into the crowded hall filled with cameras and reporters, she felt small again. The performer stood at the front, smiling confidently as flashbulbs went off around him. When it was Lena's turn to speak, her voice trembled slightly. "I'm just grateful for the chance to share my music," she said softly. It wasn't about competition. It was about connection. The performer nodded beside her. "Exactly," he said, turning to the reporters. "Music isn't a race." Last night reminded me of that. Sometimes you need someone new to remind you what it's all about. Those words surprised Lena. Coming from him, a man known for his pride and confidence, they meant something deeper. For a brief moment, she saw a different side of him. After the press conference, he pulled her aside. "You've got something rare," he told her quietly. "Don't let anyone take that away. If you ever want guidance, I'd be happy to help." Lena was too shocked to speak at first. "You mean, like teaching me?" He smiled faintly, more like sharing the stage. "I'm going on tour soon. I want you to join me." Her mouth fell open. "Me, on your tour?" "You've earned it," he said simply. "You've got a gift that people need to hear." The idea scared her as much as it excited her. A tour meant traveling to big cities, performing for thousands of people, living in a world far beyond her quiet little town. She wasn't sure she was ready for that kind of spotlight, but deep down, she knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. When she told Mira and her family, they were stunned. Mira almost jumped with joy. "You have to go," she shouted. "This is your dream." Lena hesitated. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I freeze up on stage?" Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder. "Your father believed music should come from the heart. As long as you keep that, you'll always be good enough." That night, Lena sat by her window, holding her trumpet in her lap. The stars outside seemed to whisper softly in the silence. She closed her eyes and played a quiet melody, one that only she and the night could hear. Her heart felt heavy and full all at once. She made her decision. She would go. The following week, she joined the tour. It was a completely new world for her. The bright lights, the busy schedules, the rehearsals, the endless traveling. She had her own small room on the tour bus, and for the first few days she barely spoke to anyone. Everything felt overwhelming. The performer, however, treated her with unexpected kindness. During rehearsals, he offered her advice about stage presence and breathing techniques. "Don't try to copy anyone," he told her one day. "The moment you sound like someone else, you stop being yourself." Slowly, she grew more comfortable. She performed a few short solos during the concerts, each one received with warmth and applause. People loved her humility and genuine presence. She wasn't flashy or polished. She was real. Her music carried sincerity and the audience could feel it. But fame brought its challenges too. Interviews, comments, rumors, and everything she did was suddenly public. Some people accused the performer of using her for attention. Others claimed she was getting opportunities she didn't deserve. Sometimes she overheard people whispering backstage, saying things like, "She's lucky to be here," or "She won't last long in this business." Every time she heard those words, doubt crept back into her mind. One night after a show, she sat alone on the empty stage long after everyone else had left. The chairs in the audience were dark silhouettes, and the echo of the applause still seemed to hang in the air. She lifted her trumpet and began to play softly, just for herself. The sound filled the hall, simple and pure. The performer walked in quietly and listened for a while before speaking. "You play differently when no one's watching," he said. She smiled faintly. "It's easier to be honest when it's just me." He nodded. "That's the trick, to play like that even when everyone's watching." They sat in silence for a while. Finally, he said, "You remind me of who I used to be before the fame, before the noise. Thank you for that." Lena looked up at him, surprised. "You're the one teaching me," she said. He shook his head. "Maybe we're teaching each other." As the tour went on, something beautiful happened. Their performances became more than just shows. They became moments of genuine connection. The two would often play together, blending their sounds in perfect harmony. The audience loved it, but more than that, they could feel the friendship growing between them. Every city brought new experiences. Lena saw the ocean for the first time. She performed in grand theaters on open-air stages, even in small community halls where children sat cross-legged on the floor. No matter where she went, she carried her father's trumpet and her town's spirit with her, but the fame also made her miss home more. She missed the quiet mornings, the smell of her mother's cooking, the old oak tree where she used to practice. Sometimes, after a show, she'd call Mira and just listen to her friend talk about normal things. School, gossip, the new shop that opened in town. Those little talks reminded her of who she was. One evening, while they were preparing for one of the final concerts of the tour, the performer made an announcement backstage. "After this show," he said, "we'll be recording a live album, and I want our duet to be part of it." Lena's heart skipped a beat. A live album meant permanence, something that would stay forever. She agreed, though the pressure scared her. That night they practiced their piece over and over, polishing every note. But in the middle of rehearsal, she suddenly stopped. "What's wrong?" he asked. She hesitated. "It sounds too perfect," she said quietly. "It doesn't feel alive." He stared at her for a moment, then smiled. "You're right. Let's play it again. This time forget the perfection. Just feel it." When they performed the piece that night, something magical happened. Their music didn't just fill the room. It filled hearts. It was raw, emotional, and full of truth. The audience stood and clapped for minutes after the final note. It was the kind of moment that could never be repeated, pure and timeless. After the concert, as they bowed side by side, Lena glanced at the performer. He looked at her and whispered, "That's the music I've been searching for all my life." The next morning, news spread everywhere. The performance had been recorded and was already going viral online. People called it one of the most emotional musical moments of the year. Lena looked out the bus window as they drove to their next city, her trumpet resting on her lap. She thought about how far she had come, from the quiet fields of her small town to stages filled with thousands. Yet deep down, she was still the same girl who played to the sound of birds and wind. The world now knew her name, but she never forgot why she started. It wasn't for fame or applause. It was for love for her father, for music, for the simple beauty of a single note played with honesty. And though her journey was far from over, she knew one thing for certain, that one night on stage had changed everything, not just for her, but for everyone who believed that music could come from the humblest heart and still touch the world. After the tour ended, the world seemed to slow down again for Lena. The noise, the travel, the bright lights, all of it faded into memory. When she returned home, her little town welcomed her with open arms. People filled the streets holding banners and flowers. They cheered as she stepped off the bus, her trumpet case in hand, her heart full of gratitude and disbelief. The town's mayor gave a short speech at the local park, calling her a symbol of hope and courage. But Lena didn't feel like a symbol. She was still the same girl who loved music, still the one who practiced under the old oak tree, still the girl who missed her father's voice. After all the excitement, she walked home quietly with her mother. The sun was setting and the air smelled of rain and fresh soil. "It feels good to be home," her mother said softly. Lena smiled. It feels like everything is real again. That night she placed her trumpet on the table and just stared at it. So much had happened because of that old instrument. It had carried her from her tiny town to the biggest stages in the world. She ran her fingers over its worn brass and whispered, "Thank you, Dad. You're still here." The next morning, she visited the oak tree. The leaves rustled gently and the wind carried a faint tune like a memory. She sat under it and began to play, not for an audience this time, but for herself. The sound was soft and honest, like it had always been. For the first time in months, she felt peace. But her quiet days didn't last long. The performer she had toured with called her one afternoon. His voice was warm but serious. "I've been thinking," he said. "You should have your own concert, your own night. The world needs to hear your story, not just your sound." The thought scared her. "Me, alone on stage?" He laughed gently. "You're never really alone when you have your music." He offered to help organize it, not as a manager or mentor, but as a friend. Together, they began planning a small concert that would tell her story through music. They wanted it to feel personal, not grand, and something that would connect with people's hearts. Word spread quickly. Fans from all over were eager to see her again. Journalists wrote articles about her upcoming concert, calling it the Journey of the Golden Trumpet. Tickets sold out faster than anyone expected. As the day approached, Lena's nerves grew stronger. She practiced constantly, wanting everything to be perfect. But the more she practiced, the more she felt something strange, as if the music was slipping away from her. The notes were flawless, but the emotion wasn't there. She was playing correctly, but not honestly. One night, frustrated and tired, she called the performer. "Something's wrong," she admitted. "The music doesn't feel alive anymore." He listened quietly before answering. "You're trying too hard to make it perfect. Remember what made people fall in love with your playing? It wasn't the perfection, it was the truth." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I just don't want to disappoint anyone." He chuckled softly. "You won't, you just have to remember who you are." The day of the concert arrived. The hall wasn't massive like the ones from the tour, but it was beautiful, filled with warm lights, flowers, and people who believed in her. Her mother and Mira sat in the front row, smiling proudly. The performer sat quietly among the guests, content to watch from afar. Backstage, Lena paced nervously, her trumpet in her hands. She could hear the murmur of the audience waiting. Her palms were sweaty and her heart pounded fast. She took a deep breath, looked at the old trumpet, and whispered, "Let's do this, Dad." When she stepped on stage, the crowd erupted in applause. She smiled shyly and waited for the room to quiet down. "Thank you for being here," she began. Her voice trembled slightly. "I'm not here to show off. I'm here to share something real, the music that saved me." Then she began to play. The first song was the same piece she had performed at the fair years ago, the one that had started it all. As the notes filled the air, memories flashed through her mind. Her father's laughter, her first practice, her town cheering the moment she accepted the challenge, and the faces of the people who had believed in her. The audience listened silently. Her music wasn't loud or flashy. It was gentle, sincere, full of feeling. Each piece told a story of love, loss, courage, and finding strength in simplicity. People wiped away tears without realizing it. Between songs, Lena spoke softly to the audience. She told them about her journey, how she almost gave up, how fear almost stopped her, and how kindness and faith helped her keep going. She didn't try to sound poetic or wise. She just spoke from her heart. And that honesty made every word feel alive. In the middle of the concert, something unexpected happened. As she was about to start her final song, the performer walked onto the stage holding his trumpet. The crowd gasped in surprise. He smiled at her and said, "Do you mind if I join you one last time?" Lena's eyes filled with tears. "I'd be honored," she whispered. Together, they played the duet that had made them famous, Ma, the same one that had touched the world during the tour. But this time it felt different. There were no cameras, no bright lights, no pressure, just two people sharing their love for music. When they finished, the entire hall stood and clapped. The sound was thunderous, but Lena barely heard it. She looked at the performer, who smiled gently and said, "You've come a long way." She laughed softly. "So have you." After the concert, people lined up to meet her. Some brought flowers. Others simply wanted to shake her hand. A little girl holding a shiny new trumpet ran up to her and said, "I want to play just like you." Lena knelt down and smiled. "Don't play like me. Play like you. That's where the magic is." Later that night, after everyone had gone, she sat alone on the stage. The lights dimmed and the hall empty. The performer joined her quietly. They sat together in silence for a long time before he said, "You know, this concert wasn't just your story. It was mine too." Lena looked at him, puzzled. He continued softly, "For years I forgot why I started playing. Fame took over. Perfection became everything. Watching you reminded me that music isn't about being admired. It's about giving something real. You gave that back to me." She felt tears sting her eyes. "You gave me courage," she said. "Without you, I'd still be that scared girl hiding behind her trumpet." He smiled. "Then I guess we needed each other." They sat there quietly, listening to the faint hum of the city outside. For the first time, both of them felt at peace, two souls connected by sound, not status. The following days brought even more attention. News outlets praised her concert, calling it a night of pure heart. Offers came from music schools, event organizers, and record companies. But Lena didn't rush into anything. She wanted time to breathe, to think, to return to her roots before deciding what came next. She spent a few weeks back home, visiting her school, her friends, and the people who had supported her since the beginning. The old music teacher who had once told her, "You play from the soul," cried when he saw her again. "You made us proud," he said. "Never lose that light." One evening she went back to the oak tree again. She sat under it, the golden sunset spilling across the fields. Birds chirped softly, and the wind carried the scent of wildflowers. She lifted her trumpet and began to play one last time, before the next chapter of her life began. The melody rose gently, wrapping around the trees and drifting into the open sky. It was a song of gratitude, for her father, for her town, for the performer who had challenged and guided her, and for every person who had ever listened with their heart. When she finished, she smiled quietly to herself. The world was bigger than she had ever imagined, but no matter how far she went, this little corner of it would always be home. And somewhere out there she knew her father was listening, smiling the same way he used to when she was just a little girl trying to find her first note. Years passed, but the night of that concert never faded from people's memories. Videos of her performance were shared across the world. Journalists wrote stories about the girl who brought emotion back to music. But while everyone celebrated her success, Lena herself stayed grounded. She still lived simply, still practiced under the same oak tree when she visited home, and still carried the same old trumpet her father had given her. Fame had come suddenly, but she had no interest in chasing it. What she cared about most was staying honest, in her music and in her life. The performer who had once challenged her had become a close friend and mentor, though over time their paths began to move in different directions. He continued performing in big cities, while Lena started focusing on something closer to her heart, teaching. One morning she received a letter from a small community music school in a nearby town. The school was struggling to stay open, and the letter asked if she could visit to talk to the students, maybe even perform for them. The message touched her deeply. She remembered how lonely it had felt growing up in a small town, with so few chances to dream big. Without hesitation, she agreed. When she arrived, the children were waiting eagerly outside, their faces glowing with excitement. Some held trumpets, others carried violins or drums, all of them curious and nervous. The teacher, an older man with kind eyes, greeted her warmly. "You have no idea what this means to them," he said. She smiled gently. "I think I do." Inside the small hall, she set her trumpet on a chair and began to talk to the students. She didn't start with her achievements. Instead, she told them about the early days, how her father had taught her the first notes, how her trumpet was old and scratched, how people laughed when she said she wanted to play on a big stage. The children listened with wide eyes, hanging on every word. Then she picked up her trumpet and began to play. The room went silent. Her sound filled the space, warm, pure, and full of feeling. It wasn't loud, but it carried emotion so strong that even the teachers were moved. When she finished, the children clapped and cheered, their eyes sparkling with inspiration. One little boy came up to her shyly and said, "My trumpet is broken, it sounds bad." She smiled and knelt beside him. "It's not about how shiny your trumpet is. It's about what you put into it. If you play with your heart, even an old trumpet can sound beautiful." That visit changed something inside her. She realized that sharing music like this, face to face, heart to heart, was even more powerful than any stage performance. From then on, she began visiting schools, small towns, and community centers. She wanted to remind people that music wasn't about fame or competition. It was about connection. Years went by, and she became known not just as a great musician, but as a teacher of the soul. Her kindness touched many lives. She helped young players believe in themselves, especially those who didn't have money or fancy instruments. She often told them, "Music doesn't come from your lips, it comes from your heart. If your heart is honest, people will listen." Meanwhile, the performer who had once challenged her slowly began to retire. His fame had lasted for decades, but time had softened him. He often watched Lena's interviews and concerts from home, smiling proudly. One day he decided to attend one of her music workshops without telling her in advance. When he walked into the small hall, she was sitting among children, teaching them how to breathe properly while playing. The moment she noticed him, Her face lit up. "You didn't tell me you were coming," she said with surprise. He laughed. "I wanted to see the magic myself." He stayed the entire day, listening as she taught, told stories, and played. After the children left, they sat together on the empty stage, just like they had years ago. "You've built something beautiful," he said quietly. She smiled. "You were part of it. If you hadn't challenged me back then, I might still be too afraid to dream." He shook his head gently. "No, you would have found your way anyway. You always had that fire." They talked for hours about music, life, and the strange path that had brought them together. Before leaving, he handed her a small velvet case. "I want you to have this," he said. Inside was his own trumpet, the one he had played on stages around the world. She stared at it, speechless. "I can't take this," she whispered. "You can," he said softly. "It belongs with someone who still believes, someone who never forgot why we play." Tears filled her eyes as she accepted it. "Thank you," she said. "I'll take care of it." He smiled, his eyes warm and kind. "Just promise me one thing. Keep playing, even when the world gets noisy." She nodded. "Always." That was the last time they met in person. A few months later, she received the news that he had passed away peacefully in his sleep. The world mourned the loss of a legend. For Lena, it felt deeply personal. She spent that evening alone with both trumpets, his and her father's, resting side by side. She played a slow, emotional tune under the night sky. The melody was soft and full of gratitude, a goodbye and a thank you all in one. The stars seemed to shimmer brighter as the sound faded into the air. In the months that followed, Lena organized a tribute concert in his honor. But instead of holding it in a grand hall, she chose a small open field near her hometown. The same place where she had once played for the first time as a child. People from all over came to listen. Some were students she had taught. Others were musicians who had been inspired by her journey. When she stepped onto the stage, she felt calm. There was no pressure this time, no fear, just love and music. "He taught me that perfection means nothing without feeling," she said softly to the crowd. "And he reminded me that music is a gift we share, not something we keep." She began to play, not a song of sadness, but one of remembrance and hope. It was the kind of melody that made people close their eyes and feel something deep inside. The air was filled with emotion, and for a few minutes, the world felt still. When she finished, the audience stood quietly. Then, one by one, people began clapping. Slowly at first, then louder and louder until the whole field echoed with applause. She smiled through her tears, looking up at the stars. She didn't need words. The music had said everything. After that night, Lena continued teaching and performing for many more years. Her fame grew, but she never lost her simplicity. She always told her students the same thing. It doesn't matter where you come from. If you love what you do and if you do it honestly, the world will hear you. Eventually, she opened her own music school, a place where anyone could learn, no matter their age, background, or skill level. She named it Heart Notes. The walls were decorated with photos from her journey, her first performance, her tour, her concert, and a framed picture of her and the performer standing together, smiling after their duet. Every morning, she would walk into the school, greet her students, and watch them practice with the same excitement she once had. It filled her with joy to see them chasing their dreams. She never tried to make them play like her. Instead, she helped them find their own voice. Years later, when she became older, she often sat under the oak tree again, listening to the laughter of children practicing nearby. The same wind that once carried her music now carried theirs. Sometimes she would take out her old trumpet and play softly, smiling to herself. People still talked about her story, the girl who was once challenged by a famous performer, who turned rivalry into friendship, and who changed the meaning of music for so many. But she never saw it as a legend. To her, it was just life, full of unexpected turns, beautiful mistakes, and the quiet strength to keep going. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in gold, a young girl from her school came running toward her, holding a new trumpet. "Will you listen to me play?" the girl asked eagerly. Lena smiled and nodded. "Of course." The little girl took a deep breath and began to play. The notes were uneven, shy, and a bit shaky, but they were full of heart. Lena closed her eyes, listening carefully, feeling the same warmth she had felt all those years ago. When the girl finished, she clapped softly. "Beautiful," she said. "You have something special." The girl looked surprised. "But I made mistakes." Lena smiled gently. "We all do. That's how the music learns who we are." As the evening light faded, she sat back under the tree, feeling the breeze on her face. Her life had come full circle, from a small-town dreamer to a musician, a teacher, and a guide for others. She had lost, learned, loved, and lived fully through her music, and somewhere in the distance, carried by the wind, she could almost hear two familiar trumpets, one belonging to her father and the other to the man who had once challenged her, blending softly into the golden sky. She smiled, whispering, "Thank you for the music."